Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery podcast are proud to bring you Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast. Join your hosts, Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, as they address the real issues in health and wellness for first responders. From physical and mental health to relationships and work-life balance, we leave no stone unturned. Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, as well as iHeartRadio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery answering the call.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast. I am the Podfather, Mike Miles.
And I'm Jersey Ed from Studio G with our guest today, Joe Rizzuti.
Say hello, Joe.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Good to have you here.
Two of the best. This is my old stomping grounds.
This is it, right
Yeah.
here.
Hey, there's some great history, and I'll get into it right in this neighborhood.
Absolutely. Real quick, I'm going to give some phone numbers out, but guys, just to give you a little teaser here, we're going to be talking about the history and the purpose of badge meetings. Joe is a big guy on badge meetings, and we'll get into that a little bit. But if you have any questions for us, you can always contact us at 617-379-1163 or email any questions to help@friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. And of course, go to our social media and look us up there, Friends in Recovery Community Support. And you drop us a message there. But Joe, thank you very much for coming on the show. Podfather, I know Joe's a dear friend of yours, a dear friend of mine too. And
we love Joe.
Yeah, we do. And
You guys are great.
he's been on our show several times.
That's
Correct,
right.
Joe?
To know him is to love him, and I miss him because this summer he's not able to come with his food truck and bring these delicious hot dogs.
That's a whole nother story. We can do a seminar on retirement and policing.
Look how thin I am. I've lost 30 pounds for Christ's sake.
But
You're
yeah,
not eating your hot dogs. I know.
The sausages, the Biancos and
Sausages.
Sons. You got to have the Biancos and Sons. I'm going to shout out to those guys. But that's a whole other story about recovery and what we do down there with that guy.
Right. That's right.
But the badge meetings, it's funny how, when we talk about badge meetings, I'm to qualify 8.5 years sober, thank God.
God.
I was the stress officer for my job. I worked in a great city, very busy city, similar to Mike's. I worked in the city of Revere. Very proud of that. I was hurt. But my drinking, I was an alcoholic. Let's face it, I was an alcoholic in the military. Brother MP.
Yeah.
Brother
Oh,
MP,
yeah.
95B.
95 Bravo, baby.
But
Wow.
my drinking, the whole cop routine, we all talk about it. So we're very fortunate in Massachusetts and New England. We have the Boston Police Peer Support Unit. Mike's got the book there. It's called The Shattered Badge. You can get them on Amazon used. Ed Donovan, the legend. The unit was started in like 74, but prior to that, police officers had nothing. We did choir practice.
That's right.
If you remember choir practice, Joe Wambach, if you looked at the movie The Choir Boys, that was my police department.
That was
Right?
That's
Wow.
It's so true. That's that. If you want to talk about it, there's three programs. I would say The Choir Boys is a movie. Barney Miller and Dennis Leary had one called The Job.
The job. Yep. it was
Spot
good,
on.
yep.
That's what The Job was
Adam
about.
12 too.
Yeah, Adam 12.
But that was more police work. That didn't
Yeah,
show you
but the
downside.
realistic, but how we, when police officers burnt out stress, they went to alcohol, and we didn't have these psychologists like Mike and Jeff. We had Jeff on earlier. You needed a place to go, so you went to a bar room, and when you put alcohol, any substance in your system, and you know what happens there.
Mhm.
So Boston PD, believe it or not, it's a great story. In the young infancies of AA, they had these sergeants, World War II veterans that were getting sober. They used to have a sergeant, and the story is, and I just heard this the other day again for like the third time, they used to go around the city of Boston. The duty supervisors from each station would call to this one sergeant who had an unmarked and say, like, Duffy's drunk again and walking a beat. He'd go look for Duffy. They take him to the Hotel Buckminster, I believe, one of the old hotels down at Fenway Park. They had a room with a pot of coffee, and they'd get him off the street. And and so that's how from one of the stories I got, how the whole issue started. Then Ed Donovan and a guy named Joe Rizzuti, I believe, it's all in the book. They actually come up with an idea. We needed a place for cops to go to talk it out. And it really started about with addiction. So what a badge meeting was basically found out cops, I know in addiction, we definitely needed meetings. I'm a big 12-step guy. But for police, fire, EMS, the peer support is huge. Before we had the label peer support, we had each other. We needed a place to go. So Ed put a room together. They had a building. It's really a unique No command staff could go there. It got its own charter.
Jamaica Plain, right?
It's over in Mattapan. With the old infirmary. Old infirmary. It's still there today.
Right.
We call them Blue Angels. That's the code I use.
Right.
Blue Angels are not the Navy. It's Blue Angels, Red Angels. They're the peer support people in public safety. So when you get the peers together, you can go in there and you're not going with the public. You might go to a meeting at first. Cops are very uncomfortable. We know, listen, I'm not going to go to a meeting. You're very judgmental, especially in your own neighborhood. It's a safety issue at first. At first, it becomes a safety issue.
Absolutely.
So these badge meetings were really important. You get a bunch of cops together, plus the stress. That's how peer support really started to develop. So it was a great idea. We brought it one step further, 25, 30 years ago. These badge meetings, when they started, it's all AA driven, but here's the key. Here's what's great about it. We're able, once they come in there, we find the underlying issue, and they have counselors, and you met them all, you know them, we love them, our friends Julian and Joe and Monique. Oh my God, there's so many of them over in Boston that started the movement around the world.
Right.
We can take that officer and say, hold on a minute, let's get you upstairs, let's get you talk to, he'll know that the legend was John Barry, who started the unit with his brother. Charlie was the
Charlie, public
safety director, but he was a Boston captain. That's how it all started.
Right. It's crazy.
And the history is, I find it fascinating.
I'm listening to Joe talk. I'm getting goosebumps because
these are
that's right.
If you're in the business of peer support, these guys are legends.
I got sober in '86. All right, and I'm telling you, there was nothing around at all. And I watched the show, and I saw Eddie Donovan on a TV show.
Donahue,
yeah, and I'm like, that's a Boston cop. I called Boston PD. I said, hey, I'm Mike Miles. I'm a cop in Lowell. Yeah, hold on. Boom. All of a sudden, I got some guy on the phone, and he's like, I got a pen. Yeah, all right, here, take this address down. No GPS or anything. Tom Fleming and I drove out to Mattapan, and I'll never forget it. It was a beautiful spring night. And I see these cops smoking butts. They're looking at me like, who the fuck are you? And excuse me. and I go, and then I introduce myself. They realize I was another policeman, and I was welcomed. And that was the first badge meeting I went to. And just real quick, I started my own badge meeting at a facility out in Wilmington, Mass. And I had about seven guys, 7 local cops from other departments, Stoneham, Reading, Lowell, Chelmsford, Drake. We had a good group of guys going, and we ran that for about, I don't know, a year and a half, and then it kind of dwindled off. But those were my first badge meetings. And like Joe said, going to AA was a big thing for me. Eventually, I was going to meetings all the time. I went every day, and I started just infiltrating all these other places, AA meetings. As a cop, I didn't care whether people knew if I was a cop or not. But I went to meetings in my own hometown. Have you ever done that, Joe? Have you ever gone to meetings in your own hometown?
I did. I don't live in the city of Revere anymore. The geographical cure was huge for me. When I retired, we come up to where my wife. I lived actually down the street in a town called Raleigh, where there was more horses than there were people.
Right.
It is a funny story. It kept me sober because I would hate to drink at the watering hole and drive up Route 1 because the local cops were just, oh my God.
Small towns, yeah.
Reserve officers that just had this thing against the full-time officers. It was horrible. But anyways, so I know the area really well. When you're talking about the badge meetings, we, getting back to that Boston meeting, that's my home meeting. That's where I got sober. But prior to that, my introduction to AA, I was about 23 years ago. I wanted to stop, and I reached out to, I'm a big fan of, and you guys use this, the On-Site Academy. It's unique. It was a derivative basically off the stress unit. 35 years, Hayden and Val Duggan, a nonprofit, specializes in PTSD, did the gold standard throughout the country for this stuff. So I get sent up there by Doc Barry.
Right.
And my chief, when he found out what it was, it's called On-Site Academy. My chief thought it was a shooting school. I pull up with a true story. I pull up with an old Ford Tempo undercover car with guns and ammo, and it looked like one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Everybody's smoking cigarettes out back, and they're like, "What are you doing, kid?" Well, I wanted to go out, but when I went in and I met Hayden for the first time,
Hayden Duggan,
and I fell in love with the place. And I found a certificate. 96, I got trained in the Mitchell model, and it was the peer thing. I went back to my department. My department says you don't have a problem. So I reached out. I reached out to a fellow that I met up there, and he takes me to a meeting in Lynn, Massachusetts, in the basement of the church. Well, I'm a young cop. what do you think I did in that meeting? I said, fuck. Oh, sorry. I didn't. I said, I don't want nothing to do with this. I'm not a junkie. I'm not an alcoholic. I never entertained the thought of going back and getting sober. I did go to the stress meetings in Boston. Fast forward, if I had gone to that Monday night meeting and had a peer say to me, like a guy like Mike, hey, kid, you're one of us.
Right.
I would have probably been sober.
Right.
But you don't know. But fast forward with the badge meetings, it's we're really seeing an uptick in the last 5-6 years.
Yes.
Throughout the country. We're getting calls all the time. We fine-tuned them. And what we do is we have these police psychologists, but just a certified peer. And I mean that my mentor's a guy named Tom Greenhall and Doc Duggan. You got to be a certified peer and you got to have training. You can't just get the training and think you're a clinician. You got to have certified people like Mike and Jeff and people down your facility at Jenna's House, I'm a big fan of, that have a standard. You just can't. You're going to do more damage if you don't have a standard and you don't work. Anything I do, I'm on a peer support team up in the Lowell area. I don't go do a one-on-one or talk to anybody until I call my desk and talk to a clinician, because I'm just a bozo on the bus. But here's the thing with the badge meetings. Throughout the country, now they're getting popular because we're realizing you can't do choir practice. Funny story, I was a National Guard recruiter for 7 years. And I'm at a training seminar and a guy comes up to me, he says, hey, I know you. So yeah, I've been a cop for 20 years. He goes to a guy named Steve, Trooper Steve. He says, you put me in the National Guard. Fast forward 7 years later, we're best friends. Through that conversation, he says, hey, we need a meeting up in the Lawrence, the Merrimack Valley. And the Mass State Police, again, Boston PD shares the wealth. They're not specifically for Boston. They'll help anybody. And that's what's beautiful. They don't take a dime. They're awesome. Well, the Mass State Police, the supervisor now is Karen Duffy, great people. They've got 4 regionalized teams. They offered up, Mike's been there, you've been there, but a room. And now we've got a beautiful meeting on Tuesday nights up in the Lawrence area that we put 15 to 20 people in for the last 7 years. Now we got to, because of the virus, it's really tough, but no excuse. The Zoom meetings we've got a list. And if anybody wants, you can get in touch with Mike. And you don't have to be from New England. You can Zoom in. I know I've been to your meet.
That's what I was going to ask you, Joe. Badge meetings, are they on Zoom? Obviously they are. Yes. Right.
They are. And we try to vet people. So if you're going to get questioned who you are, you might have to hold up your credentials.
Okay.
We're going to be very honest. We're very protective.
Good. Should be.
And I've been to your meeting. I love the meeting down there, but it's got me to go to outside meetings. What I'm saying is we get the foot in the door. The person gets the foot in the door. Then it's very key to find a good meeting. And we talked about this before. You just can't go to your hometown meeting if you feel uncomfortable. It's not going to work. Am I right?
100%.
100% right.
If somebody's working undercover, if somebody, and I've had guys that have worked undercover, they're out there. Their whole appearance is different. There's no way in God's green earth they can go to an AA meeting or an NA meeting and feel comfortable only because of the job they do. It's legit. It has nothing to do with the individual's personality. It has everything to do with his profession. And it's a safety issue. It really is 100%. I used to go to a shelter meeting in 88, 89. I was a couple of years sober. And I remember there was a guy there and he found out I was a cop, and he was a Boston kid. He was living at the shelter, and he took out his frustration on me one day. And, it ended up in a shoving match outside the shelter. And I didn't arrest him because I didn't want to bring that stigma there, but he should have been arrested because, I had we got an actual a physical confrontation, so right then I knew for me that it was time for me I still went to a lot of meetings, but that's when we started the badge meeting that we used to have with me, Frank Waterman, who passed away. I'll say his name. Great guy. He was an undercover. He was a sergeant. He worked at the DEA. He was a local cop. Great guy. He was sober a long time. He died of cancer. One of my very good friends, and a few other guys too. But
hey guys, real quick, we're going to take a quick break here, Joe. And when we come back, we'll talk about we'll finish this conversation. We'll also talk about how somebody can start a badge meeting. And I got a statement I want to make about the badge meetings. I think they're great, and we'll talk a little bit more about Zoom and badge and all that. So
Yep, answering the call. The First Responders podcast. We'll be right back.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Answering the call, the First Responders podcast. I am the Podfather, Mike Miles.
And I'm Jersey Ed, live from Studio G. One thing I forgot to mention, Podfather, just as this is all going on, I just want to remind everybody about our Friends in Recovery online 12-step meetings. They're not badge meetings, but they are. Joe's been to them. He spoke at one. They're 12 noon and 7 p.m. Eastern time daily. If you go to the Friends in Recovery community of support or Friends in Recovery podcast Facebook pages, the password, the ID number, everything's in there. And listen, if all three of us can get in that meeting, all you young kids definitely can get into it.
That's right. So, hey, before the break, Joe was talking about the meeting over on Marsden Street in Lawrence, and you and I went there one night after we were up at Two Guys.
Yes. Yeah.
Studio 21, and that was a great meeting, and I wanted to start going every Tuesday night, but unfortunately or fortunately, I run a step meeting on Tuesday nights at Crossroads up in Salem, and I'll tell you, that's a piece of heaven for me. Yeah. I can't even tell you how much that's helped me, and I got a lot of years of sobriety. I don't say that in a bragging way. I'm very, very fortunate through the teachings of AA and people like you and Joe and Sweets and Ed. And Jeff. That's why I've been sober a long time. But I really liked that meeting. There was like an aura about it, know.
I want to tell a quick story before, Joe. I'll let you go after this. Quick story. You were there, Joe. Now, I'm a civilian. Obviously, everybody knows that on the show. And so I was a little nervous going into that meeting because it's a badge meeting. And like Joe said earlier, if you're going on a Zoom meeting, you might have to show your credentials because you're a cop. They just don't let everybody on. Right. The badge meetings is really reserved for a first responder. So I go to this meeting and I knew Mike, I knew Joe, I knew Colleen, who she was running the meeting and everything. I didn't know anybody else. And at about 10 minutes into the meeting, I don't know if you guys remember this, that big tall guy walked in.
Oh yeah.
Right. So he sat like right at the beginning, and we were all going around. Yeah. And I said, I said who I am, and then they asked him he said before I said anything, he goes, who the fuck is this guy? What's he doing? And I was like, holy shit, man. I'm like, I'll go outside.
He's a big dude too.
Big.
Right.
He was a big black guy, and he had a gun on him. He was in uniform. I looked at Joe like somebody help me here. This guy will look at me and take me down. So, but it ended up being real cool. Everybody vouched for me, and the guy was really cool. But that's how important it is for just police officers, just people with and first responders to be at that meeting.
Let's qualify one thing. When we say badge meetings, it's for fire, police, EMS, corrections, active, and definitely retired. I'm sitting here in Beverly, Massachusetts, right? And I'm thinking right down the street, literally a block away, is one of the oldest, well, right now because of the virus, they're not active. One of the oldest badge meetings in the state, other than Boston, is one of my meetings is Monday nights. We're right down the street.
Really? Yeah.
And so when you said the location, I'm like, oh my God. And again, I didn't know about this. Every night in Massachusetts, there's a badge meeting. That's the truth. Right? Massachusetts. Wow. Some of them are Zoom. Some of them have gone regularly. You can call Mike and we get you a list. There's a new one that just come up out of Stone Mountain, Georgia on a Thursday night. You got your
Mountain, Georgia.
But you know what's but here's the key. We upped it with on-site with Wednesday night. They have an alumni meeting up there. I'm also doing steps for the fourth time. I got a great step meeting on Tuesday mornings with Dr. Duggan and two other people. And we're doing the traditions. But what's great about, we stepped up our game with the badge meetings. Now we're telling people have at least one or two qualified peers or a clinician in the meeting. Now, There's a great meeting over at the leader program at McLean's on a Saturday night. There's a great speaker this weekend coming up, but they do theirs a little different because people are newer to treatment. So when they start to go down and get down the road of a trauma, we stop them and we get them help. So it's the same thing kind of in a badge meeting where you can come in, and if you don't want to say you're an alcoholic, we tell people you don't have to be an alcoholic to come to these badge meetings. You can have a bad day on the road and you don't want to do a formal defusing or a debriefing. Come in. We used to see, I would say 85 or 90% of our issues in the badge meeting where we call administrative betrayal. The boss is a jerk, the boss an ass. We've seen the big change now because of what's happening on the street in the last year. Well, I should say, I'll leave my politics alone, right? But there's been a kind of a switch to what's going on, and these guys and girls are getting beat up, especially cops. But having a qualified peer, we can identify if somebody's going down that rabbit hole, because you can be triggered by the guy next to you. We pull them aside, take them out, and we get them to a Jeff or a Mike or you. So that's the beautiful part. You don't have to wait or pick up the phone. You can say, you know what? I know there's a badge meeting. Let me go. Let me vent. So these things have been a godsend. So,
yeah. And I think with what's been going on in the last several months and probably more than the last couple of years with police being a target of violence, being shot at a higher rate, being killed at a higher rate. I mean, it's insane. And I remember watching the news last summer in New York City where cops were getting buckets of water dumped on them and they weren't doing anything about it, and I thought, wow, that's a horrible world to live in. So I love the fact that you don't have to be an alcoholic or a drug addict to be involved in a badge meeting. You can just be a cop that had a bad day, that maybe even thinking about leaving the job. You say, hey, I didn't sign off for this bullshit. Yeah. No one's going to protect me. The city manager, the mayor, they're not going to stand up to these people and protect me. And of course, there's a lot going on now where they want to take a lot of the police officers' power away from them and try to make everybody conform to, no chokeholds, none of certain types of holds on people. And, that's a very stressful situation. And the society can look at it one way because they don't understand when somebody's out of control, they're out of control right then, right that minute, right that second, right there in front of you. It's not a video, it's happening. And they can hurt somebody. They can hurt you, but they can hurt someone else. You need to use every available technique how to get somebody down. And unfortunately, if you get a hold of the head, the body's going to follow. And the head's above the shoulders, and in between there's a neck. So you got to grab hold of people sometimes and put them on the ground.
What we're seeing too with that, Mike, is you have a lot of managers out there. You can't tell them. I'm a strong FOP. And Mass FOP has been doing a great thing. Me and Tom, we've got an FOP lodge up in the Merrimack Valley that's going to be just a strictly wellness lodge. But people don't understand the administrative stuff, the policies that are being written by chief. Let's face it, there's the chief that come up to the ranks that, like Commissioner Gross is an amazing man in Boston, a cop's cop. And again, absolutely, the guy's amazing. And you get the guys that didn't like the flavor of the street. They have a good Saturday and they go up to the ranks. They forget where they came from. And they put these policies in and forgetting what it's like to work the road. And these guys are getting jammed up, and it causes them, this is the thing, it causes them to hit the bottle, it causes them to hit the drug. And if they don't have an outlet to talk to, this is the rabbit hole we're seeing. So to the bosses out there, you have a little compassion, realize what's going on with your people.
Well, not only is there's the and we talk about this all the time, not only the stress of what's going on in out in the world, they also have the stress of, like you said, the management of everybody breathing down their neck. So you guys are getting it from both ends, but everybody kind of on top of you guys, and that has to be super stressful. It has to be. And
and on the other hand too, I just had a conversation with a retired chief coming over here, and as much as I bust on them, they're under a lot of stress, these guys. Huh. And we're trying to develop, I know, Tom, we've been working on trying to get a program for them. And I bust on them. And there's some of them I despise, I'll be honest with you. I just don't like what they're doing out there. But there's a lot of good-hearted people, that want to do the right thing. But they're just think about, they got 45 Joe Rizzutis acting, on the street running wild,
Well, you got some chiefs that make it to that position because of politics, and they were piss poor cops to begin with.
Oh, absolutely.
They were slapping around junkies and girls and handcuffs. I'll tell you, I've seen it up close and personal. And I just shake my head. And how are you going to have any respect for someone like that? Somebody that was a complete moron as a cop, as a street cop, but fortunately they make it up the ranks because of politics and the money they paid out. And you're going to listen to that person. That person's going to give you advice.
But on the plus
but
side,
how many good chiefs did you guys come across? So there has to be a lot
of.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I worked, and honestly, in my department, I worked for all of them. I had some, I went through a lot of traumas in the department, and I worked for my last guy, I called him PX Skelly. He was a neighbor of mine. He's a great guy. He booted me in my rear end when I needed it. But I was very fortunate. I had I had great bosses because they were city guys. But again, there's a lot with the hope and faith. They're not two common streetwalkers from Chelsea. I tell people that. I got to go for Chelsea, Mass once in a while. They're great people. But here's the deal. There's a lot of people that have come now in the last 20 years through the peer support that are becoming supervisors, and there's a lot more good than there is bad. But anyways, that's badge meetings. You can reach out to me.
Or me.
Or
you.
Or me on all
Jersey
our The one good thing about the bad Zoom meetings, Joe, and we have on our 7 p.m. we get a few different first responders on there, and I think these badge meetings on Zoom are good because they don't have to show their faces at first. Even on badge or even on our friends in recovery, they don't have to show their faces at first, and then they can get comfortable.
The comfortability is the key.
Start talking about it. Obviously, they might have to show their credentials on a badge meeting or talk about their credentials, but they don't have to talk. They can just get in that room and listen to everybody, listen to us talk, listen to us. What you guys go through, and listen to some of the some of our past our shows. Police stories from the field, like Podfather always tells stories, and Joe, maybe we'll get you on a police story from the field. But I like the police stories because what it gives is
He's
young
got some
kids,
stories.
I'm sure he does. What it gives is some of these young kids a chance to understand. Hey, this does, this could happen in the field, and this could happen. And same thing in the badge meetings. The stuff that's obviously is talked about there stays there, but you guys can kind of give some of these younger kids who may be struggling just because they had a bad day, or maybe they're dabbling in alcohol or whatever.
It's real quick with that is I get a core of young people under 7-8 years in the job that have got sober that are my go-to guys, because the younger person coming on the job is so easier to reach to a drug now. They grew up with the marijuana. And we all know what it does. Because they think that's the way to go. But we've got a good core of younger officers. And again, one of the biggest segments I see that don't get enough credit, that need the help, is the EMS people, these private ambulance companies that see the trauma. And we've been reaching out to them, just because they work for a private company. They're more than welcome, and we'll get them.
Dispatchers. I know some dispatchers.
Huge dispatchers. Huge.
You talk about a tough profession. All right, I did it for a couple of years when I got out of the Army, and it was different back then. Switchboard, plugs, teletype. There was no computers as we have nowadays, and everything was paper. All the records, all your warrants, everything was paper. If you had somebody stopped and they had a warrant for murder and you couldn't find that paper warrant, guess what? See you later.
How about driving? Going down driving, you have to go pick them up with the paper warrant.
That's
so
right.
The away game, you want to get
right.
They wanted to get you away from the street because you're pulling over too many cars. You get in the wagon. They used to send me to the Cape, me and my partner, to find the guy. Oh, you go to Springfield, get him off the road for a while.
Yeah, so. It's good to be old and to been in that profession 35 years. I've been retired 5 years now, and it's so good to see stuff like this.
That book was 25, 30 years old.
Right. And
what's the name of the book, guys? Can you give us the name of the book?
It's called The Shattered Badge. And it's about Eddie Donovan.
His son is actually the famous comedian Mike Donovan. You'll see Mike Donovan all the time on the different Tonight Show stuff. But
I'll make sure we put that in the show notes.
He's still alive. He's still alive. He's on. He's an actor. He's still alive down in Florida.
And Eddie was a guy that had his own problems, and he kind of brought everything to a public view about his addiction, alcohol addiction, and recovery, and how cops have a stressful job. And Dr. Barry, one of the first in Stoneham, one of the first and best, without a doubt, one of the best people I've ever met. Him and his wife Peg. You know what? They were like fathers and mothers to us young cops. into every car. I never went into his office when there wasn't 2 or 3 Stoneham cops sitting in there drinking coffee, shooting the breeze, because that's just the type of atmosphere it was, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The old Armory. His wife was the secretary. Absolutely.
Wow, good. Well, guys, we're gonna have to wrap this up.
Great
here.
show, great
Joe,
show.
thank you. You're such a great guest, Joe. You know, you and I communicate all the time. You're always giving me updates on things, and we're working on clients together.
Nobody works harder than Joe.
Oh my
Nobody.
God, yeah.
Nobody.
This man here
Nobody.
is
No, I'm just a bozo on the buses. Hey,
No. You're a very humble guy, but let me just say,
tell you, Joe, everybody appreciates you out there.
Same with you guys. Don't work. You guys, look, listen, I'm not blowing smoke up your butt, but the Genesis House, I've been familiar with you for 25 years.
Great place.
It was one of the first, along with Brattleboro. That there's a lot of places to come on, and we're not going to get into that. But we've got the best of the best, and we got a couple of good ones now, and then there's a couple that one right down the street that Hey, you guys keep up the good work.
That leader program is a good program, but you're right about Genesis. I've sent so many people down there and loved ones and everybody else, and you know what? That is the to me, that's, as they say, the Cadillac of recovery.
The geographical cure, sometimes out of sight, out of mind. As a union person, sometimes you need to get the person out of the chief. So
you do it.
But thank you again, and I'll be talking to you on that other
Joe,
stuff.
thanks. Yeah,
we get Tommy on
to
talk about the work he's doing too.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Podfather, great show. Joe, thank you so much.
Super.
You guys, I sit back here and I say this all the time. I'm the student. I like to learn and listen to you guys. So I know I don't do much talking here, but it's just amazing what you guys do. And thank you for all your years of service and protecting us and making sure everybody's safe out there. We really appreciate it.
God bless the guys and girls that are on the street right now.
That's right.
Absolutely.
God bless them. Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, everybody, answering the call, the First Responders Podcast. I am the Podfather, and
stay safe, everybody.
That concludes this episode of Answering the Call, the First Responder Podcast. Thanks to Genesis House for sponsoring the show and supporting first responders who are struggling with addiction and mental health. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates. If you are interested in being a guest on the show, email us at help@friendsandrecoverypodcast.com.